Andy Derman, EVP for the Global Business Unit here at Lightcast, and I'm joined by Eleanor Magrini, our Head of Global Research. So welcome to Lightcast. We're on a mission to help the world understand what's happening in the labour market so that organisations and individuals can make better, more informed decisions that relate to education, careers and employment. In this video, we're going to actually dive into some local labour markets now and start to think about what's really driving them. So Eleanor, talk us through how we're going to dive into this.
So we are going to look at the Italian market in a little bit more detail and trying to see how the occupation makeup of different cities varies in terms of job postings, and in particular, what's the makeup for jobs in Rome compared to other Italian cities and the Italian labor market overall. And the way we're going to do it is for each there is a row for each occupation group, and we are interested in the orange dot, which is Rome, and then the red dots are Italy overall, and then we have Milan in blue and Naples in purple as our other benchmarks. And what we want to see is how further out is the orange dot for Rome, which tell us how relevant a particular occupation is in the capital, and then also where the orange dot is in comparison with the other dots.
Cool. So what are we seeing then in terms of what's driving demand in Rome, but also then how it fares against the national average and then those two comparator cities that you've picked out?
So one interesting thing that we see is that when we look at the Italian labor market as a whole, and this is also true in particular for the Milan labor market, those production workers related occupation, especially in terms of metal and plastics production workers, play the largest role in the job postings within the Italian labor market in the past 12 months. But when we look at Rome, that is not the case, but instead what we see is that Rome is at the far left of that sliding bar for metal and plastic and production workers. Instead, when we look at Rome, what we see is that it is computer programmers that it is the occupation that it is most popular among job postings in the capital over the past 12 months. And computer programmers, in this case, is not as popular in the Italian labor market overall or in the Milan and Naples labor market. Once again, it's really showing that we need to go at the granular level if we want to fully understand the differences between the labor markets that might not be as visible at the national level. And then we also see that for the Rome-specific labor market, we see a lot of roles around sales and customer service roles and retail, particularly prominent and important. And again, this is different compared to other labor markets in Italy. If we look at Naples, for example, it is sales and then retail sales workers and customer services role that are particularly prominent in the labor market of the city. And again, this is different compared to Rome and to Milan and to Italy as a whole.
Fascinating, and it's a really important reminder. We can't just take national averages and assume that applies to every city. You can see some quite different trends, particularly for Rome that you've picked out as our example for this one. And so, very different profile. And as we dive into Rome more in more detail, we can certainly start to think about not just the roles that are driving demand that you've picked out there, and we can revisit, but actually start to think about what that demand looks like in monetary terms as well, through the salaries that are being sought. So yeah, talk us through the sorts of analysis we've done here.
Yes, so when we look at the top occupations in a labor market, we can look at it in through different lenses. We can look at it through volumes. And so in the case of Rome, we have seen computer programmers, sales roles, and data scientists as being the occupation buckets that have been more popular in the labor market over the past 12 months in the capital. But then we can also look at this through looking at the salaries that are being advertised by employers. And this gives us a different sense of what's available in the labor market, because it's not just about the volumes, but also the kind of return that the different job opportunities can create for people that are looking for jobs in the labor market of Rome in Italy. And in that case, we see that it is physicians' roles, legal professional, chemists that are among the occupations that have the highest salary premium or the highest salaries being offered at the moment in the labor market. And I think it's really interesting to compare volumes and salaries here, because clearly the top 10 occupations are quite different in terms of volumes and salaries. So the physicians and the legal professionals are not really very popular occupations in terms of volumes. So there are fewer job postings out there for these roles, but the salary they offer is much higher. Computer programmers, we've seen that they're the top ones in terms of volumes. They also have, they are also among the top 5 when it comes to salaries. But then instead we see other occupations that are very popular in volume that are disappearing from the top 10 when we look at salaries. So for example, the retail sales workers, lots of works in retails, but not necessarily the one that carry the highest salaries being advertised.
Yeah, fascinating. And so there's this interesting mix, isn't there, between very niche specialist roles that aren't necessarily high demand, but do pay really well, and that obviously presents great opportunity, but potentially significant challenge in actually accessing those roles where demand is lower, versus high volume but low salary roles. And then I suppose the interesting one is finding the sweet spot where there's a lot of demand, but also good earnings capability. So your computer programmers is a great example there, and therefore can help people navigate the Roman labor market and really start to think, certainly career entrants and future workers can really start to navigate where their opportunities might be greatest in the local labor market. And of course, as you're starting to look to the key roles that might be particularly interesting or attractive, both in terms of demand and wage returns, we probably want to look beyond simply what the role is and actually start to pose the question, well, what skills does one need to be working in these areas? So you've done a bit of a deep dive, both in terms of picking out that top example and helping us understand that a little bit more, but then reminding us of the value of comparing those profiles with other areas or other roles to start to think about how different roles drive very different skills needs, and different geographies seem to drive different skills needs even within the same role. So talk us through what we're seeing here.
Yes, I think you summarize it really well, in the sense that different labor markets, different occupations all play a role when it comes to the skills that are most in demand. So if we want to understand a little bit more about what's happening to computer programmers in Rome, and in particular, what are the skills, the specialized skills that you need in Rome to access these computer programmers roles, we see that there are variations compared to other labor markets and to other occupations. So when we look at the top 10 specialized skills for computer programmers in Rome, for example, we see a lot of programming languages, especially in relation to Java and SQL, coming up at the top as the most frequently cited skills in the job adverts for computer programmers in Rome. So these are the kind of skills that employers are requiring for when they advertise for computer programmers in the capital. And we also see artificial intelligence, computer science, so more general technical skills being present in the top 10 alongside the more specific software or programming languages. And this is different to the makeup of the top 10 specialized skills that appear even looking at the same occupation, computer programmers, but in a different labor market. In this case, we've taken Berlin as an example. What we see here is that computer science is actually the top one most cited skill. And then the more specific programming language come after this more general skill. And so we get the Java-related roles, skills being second and third rather than first and second. And interestingly, actually SQL, which is among the most cited specialized skills in computer programmers in Rome, is not even in the top 10 in Berlin, where instead you see the programming language of Python coming up. And then the other thing to consider is that even within a specific labor market, so coming back to Rome, the skills that are in demand for different roles are different. So if you compare computer programmers job postings to sales representative job postings, and the kind of skills that employers require for these two roles are very different. Because they're reflective of the different roles that people need to cover for these two different occupations. And in this case, if we look at the top 10 skills most required for sales representative in Rome, what we see is that at the top there is artificial intelligence, and then it's followed by things like business to business, customer relationship management, sales management, so skills that are more related to a sales role. But I think what's interesting here is that first one being artificial intelligence, which is a skill that comes up often for computer programmers as well, and that kind of tells you that perhaps the sales representative needs to have some knowledge of AI in order to sell some of the products or the services that role would cover in terms of sales.
Yeah, really fascinating. And on that point, starts to show the interconnected nature of different industries within localities. The reality is there's a lot of demand for computer programmers and in the tech industry in Rome. And of course, there needs to be an outlet for that production. And so those same companies will likely be employing salespeople to be selling those products on the global and national stage. So we can see that interconnectedness between different roles that may be driven by the fact that these are roles in the same potentially company, right? As they get taken out, but those companies, there may be similar demand in Berlin, but they might be a different nature of the sorts of companies that are driving demand for computer programmers. And so I imagine if we were to look at Berlin's sales representatives, they might also have a similar profile to the computer programmers in some sense, in terms of the industries they're selling to, but will have similarities in terms of some of those sales techniques within the sales role. So we can really start to see the interconnectedness of labor markets, particularly when you really peel back the layers and look at the labor market at the skills level. There's such granular building blocks to the labor market. So fascinating analysis. Thank you very much, Eleanor. And I think the interesting thing in this quick summary that you've provided is really showing the value of diving deep, right? So as we start to think about different markets, so you've started by really putting a showcase onto Rome, as we think about what are the opportunities that the Roman labor market presents, and how do education providers ensure that the skills employers are seeking are being served, as the city planners really start to think about how to nurture that economy, and employers navigate understanding the recruitment and talent landscape, really the ability to dive into understanding not just Rome itself, but its place relative to competitor labor markets locally, but also start to think about skills portability into other proximate labor markets, adjacent labor markets, whether that be similar companies and the other roles that they might have, and therefore the interconnected the connectivity there, or similar labor markets in terms of the roles, but in different geographies, and thinking about skills portability there. So fascinating thoughts about individuals as they find their way as to whether they might look to move around, whether geographically or into different industry settings, but also thinking about how employers think about finding new talent pools as they expand their activities. So really fascinating analysis. Thank you very much, Eleanor.
Thank you.